Okay, so me and my husband have been married for a little over 5 years now. We've always wanted to have a big family with lots of kids. The problem was that I just could not get pregnant no matter how many positions or times we've tried. When I went to the doctor last year, I was told that I'm infertile and will not have children naturally, and we should best try for an IVF. Since then, I've been cutting corners and scraping every last dollar I have for an IVF. My husband was initially on board, but early this year he started to get iffy on the IVF. He kept emphasizing adoption and discouraging the IVF, and I definitely considered it, but I want to have a kid of my own blood first before I adopt another child. Well, me, my mother-in-law, and my sister-in-law, Jean, were chatting on WhatsApp, and I told my sister-in-law the amount of money that I still need to save for multiple rounds of IVF, just in case the first one doesn't work. And if the IVF doesn't work, then I will adopt a child. Jean asked if I was really on board with adopting my husband's illegitimate child. My heart started beating really fast, and I was so confused when my mother-in-law chimed in that I was truly a kind child for forgiving my husband's affair and even taking in their kid. I made an excuse and hung up the phone when my mind was racing. I tried to convince myself that Jean and my mother were playing jokes on me, so I went upstairs to ask my husband for his side of things. He paled rather fast and asked me where I heard it from. I told him Jean and mother told me, and that's when he decided it would be good to tell me what he was thinking. He'd been hooking up with one of his old flames, and she got pregnant. He told me that he loved me, but he didn't want to go through extra steps to have a child, so maybe I could forgive them and adopt their kid. Maybe even create a bond with it. I was completely heartbroken by his audacity. He dropped 2 bombs on me that day and expected me just to take it like that. I more or less ran out of the house to my parents' house because I really needed some comfort. I told my parents the whole thing, and they just told me that while the cheating was wrong, I should step up and become a mother to his kid because they know how much I wanted a kid and how great of a mother I'll be. I can't stop crying because it seems that no one is on my side. I know I should probably try to get a divorce, but my mind is all over the place. My heart hurts so bad that I can't even get out of bed. Can anyone help me? Is there any advice I could get in this? Why will your husband's affair partner give up her parental rights? Instead, she'll try to form a happy family with your husband, who will of course divorce you. If you stay, your future is to be tarred as the evil stepmother in the future when kiddo asked why his actual mom isn't in the picture, or to accept an open marriage where your husband will impregnate various old flames and leave you to raise their children. Leave as soon as possible. Run for the hills. I don't think I've ever felt this much pain in my life, and isolated to the point where I've had to seek advice on here. I truly never thought this would happen to me. My boyfriend, let's call him Kyle for simplicity, and I had a really stable and loving relationship. And for context, I've lived most of my life in London, and I met him in London as well. He is American. He works in asset management, and we're both fairly traditional. So I work mostly freelance, but I don't really make even 1/3 of what he makes, which is fine, as I plan on becoming a housewife and the primary caretaker. But this year he was offered a job in New York City, where the pay is astronomically higher than he is making in London. And my whole life is in London, all of my family and friends. But I knew this was going to open up doors for him, and that we'd be able to buy a home in the future, and etc. So we moved right after Christmas to a really nice flat. Did not realize how expensive rent was here, by the way. And because of COVID, he works mostly remote, but sometimes he goes in and out of the office. He had his friends, so I realized that I also needed to at least try to befriend someone. But it was incredibly difficult, because when we moved, there were still restrictions, and I wasn't actively working. But when we met our landlord, I thought she was great. Quinn for simplicity. We were almost the same age, and even though we didn't have too much in common, she was incredibly welcoming, that we even went to breakfast and lunch sometimes. Kyle was happy that I had befriended her. As the months went by, Quinn and I would have some drinks at my place, or I'd go to hers. And one time I went with Kyle, and we got to know each other on a more personal level. She told me how dating felt so much harder at her age, and that she's always had fertility issues in her family, and was afraid that she was running out of time. And I sympathized with her, because I had endometriosis, and I also had a similar fear. But in the last 2 months, I would only see her maybe once a week, as she claimed she was spending a lot of her time with her aunt, and so she was more busy than usual. I understood. 2 days ago, while Kyle was at work, I went to check the concierge for a package, and I saw Quinn's aunt. I said hi and was polite, and we spoke, because I had briefly met her before. I asked her how Quinn was doing, since I hadn't seen her last weekend, and her aunt said that she was feeling a bit sick, but it was just morning sickness. I was confused, but I guess my face made her think that I was deeply concerned, and her aunt said that morning sickness is just expected in the first trimester. I was floored, not in an angry way. I was just caught off guard because I had no idea how or when she had become pregnant. In a way, I was kind of happy for her, but I also was slightly sad that she didn't tell me, as I thought I was her friend. But I was excited for her, and I sent her a message congratulating her. When my boyfriend came home that night, I revealed to him that she was pregnant and how happy I was for her, and the look on his face. I have never seen anything like that in my life. The color literally drained from his face, the way you would picture it happening in a cartoon, and he was almost gaping. I was extremely confused, but he gained his composure and went to shower. I was making dinner, and my mind was racing. I couldn't really focus, but I couldn't pinpoint why. After he showered and I finished cooking, I decided to lay on the bed for a while because I was feeling horrible. My boyfriend then said he needed to get some really important bills from our mail, and he left quickly. At this point, I felt so horrible, so sick, because something felt ridiculously wrong. The entire atmosphere had shifted, and I was completely unsettled. So I waited for him to leave, and I followed him. It was all such a blur that I don't even remember walking to her floor, but I saw exactly what I instinctively thought I would. I hid behind the wall. At this point, I was about to throw up, and they were arguing, and I couldn't even hear what about, because at that point, I showed myself before running back to our flat. Kyle came after me, asking me to wait, to hear him out, but I couldn't even breathe. I felt like I was going to vomit and choke at the same time. My throat was so constricted that I couldn't even talk, and he was rambling on about how it happened 2 months ago and it was a mistake. He never intended on hurting me, and he felt terrible. He said that it didn't mean anything, that Quinn literally meant nothing to him, and it was a one-time thing, and he didn't know she was pregnant, and he was having a hard time processing that she was even pregnant in the first place. I told him to sleep on the couch, and I practically cried into my pillow all night. It's been 2 days since. I haven't left my bed, and I can't eat. It feels like it will just come up, and I haven't been able to speak to him since. He comes to the door and asks me to at least hear him out and give him a chance and that we can work things out. Quinn sent me a message that I haven't read. I've given up my entire life and moved to a foreign country, and my name is on the lease. If I break it, I can't afford to pay the rest off, and I think what's even worse is that I still love him. I hate him and love him at the same time, but I cannot believe he did this to me. Honestly, my life is over, and I do not know if I will ever recover from this. I think your property manager will let you break lease under the circumstances. I'd contact whatever company the rent money goes to and explain in as much detail as you like. But say you have to break lease because of extenuating circumstances. It'll suck, but you're going to be fine once it's over. Reach out to whoever you can for any support you can muster. Make that jerk pay for a hotel till you leave. Just do whatever you can to take care of you and get out of there. I'll try and make a long story short here. My soon-to-be ex-husband and myself were high school sweethearts. First, everything for each other. We were together from the age of 17 to the age of roughly 22-23, birthdays making age different. He proposed to me in a very romantic way on Valentine's Day that year, and although I had been having second thoughts about being with him and settling down at such a young age, I accepted his proposal because I did not want to break his heart and disappoint him after all the effort he put in. I even tried to convince myself that I was ready for this. We set the wedding date for a year away. 6 months in, I broke it off. I was too young. I wanted to live on my own for a while, and I wanted to see other men, because he had been the only guy I had ever been with, not just sexually, but emotionally. Heck, I didn't even have any guy friends, so he was my only guy I had to compare to. As you can imagine, he was not very happy about this. I tried to tell him over and over that he did nothing wrong. It wasn't that he was lacking in any way, it was just that I really wanted to be on my own. I tried to stay friends with him, but eventually I had to block him and cut him out of my life altogether because every time I would see or talk to him, he would get emotional. He saw me on a date one night with a mutual friend, and he became an emotional mess. So, for both our sakes, I avoided him. It wasn't easy on me either. As I said, he didn't do anything wrong, and it's just hard to move on from someone who you were so intimate with. A little over 2 years had gone by since I blocked him, and nearly 3 since I broke things off, and I had not heard from him in that entire time. I had lived on my own during that time and had dated several different guys, a couple of which lasted a few months, but most did not. Honestly, it was my choice they didn't last, because I figured, what was the point of going from one steady long-term relationship to another, when the first one was fine? I didn't want to be tied down. Anyway, at around the 3-year mark, I decided that I would look him up on Facebook, and he had his settings set to public, so I looked at everything he had posted over the past couple of years, and there was no mention of any woman, so I took a chance and texted him. We got together and met up just to catch up. He seemed very happy to see me. We talked about my travels and his work, and it just felt like I had never left. We started seeing each other again, and 2 years later, I start to ask him about marriage. This probably should have been my first clue there was a problem, and now looking back, I kick myself for not seeing it. He told me that he had already asked me to marry him, and he wasn't going to do it again. If it was something I wanted, I would have to ask him. Being dumb, I thought that what he said made sense. I did accept, and then turned it away, so maybe it was on me to do this. So I did. A year and a half later, we were married. Red flag number 2, that once again, I should have seen, was he refused a big wedding in a church. So against my wishes, and really against the wishes of my mother, we got married at the courthouse with just a few family members present. However, while the ceremony was nothing to write home about, we did have a great honeymoon, and the first few years of our marriage were what I would consider fine. That is until yesterday. He came home after work and we ate dinner, and he seemed fine. Then he called me into the living room and turned the TV off and tore my heart out and stomped it on the floor. He proceeds to tell me, by the way, with a ducking smile on his face, that he has decided it was time for him to leave me. He felt like his life was stagnant and he wanted to make changes. He didn't want to feel like for the rest of his life he missed out. That last part was his jab at me from all those years ago, because at one point I said that to him. He then proceeds to tell me that he is going to be moving in with my cousin, who, by the way, is pregnant with his child. I of course am bawling by this point, begging him not to do this to us. He just gets up, gathers his coat, and says, "Now you know how it feels," as he walked out the door. I don't understand any of this. What I did was an insecure young woman who had not lived and did not know for sure what she wanted. He is a grown man who didn't do this to a girlfriend, but to his wife. Why go through all of this? Why not just tell me when I contacted him after being apart for years to go to hell or something? Why waste both of our times? Did he really never forgive me, or is this just an excuse to justify his cheating? Also, I will never forgive my cousin for this. She is dead to me. He knew I wanted a baby, but he always wore protection with me. I guess the two good things coming out of this is we didn't have a child together. That would have been a mess. And him wearing protection helped keep me free of the STIs I'm sure she has. Obviously, this isn't over between us. It does break my heart, because up until now, he did this psycho crap where he was a perfect husband. But it was all a lie, I guess. And now, I don't even know what to think of all the years just wasted on him. Here's my question. Do I confront my cousin or just let it go? Obviously, family gatherings in the future will be out of the question as well. My mom and my aunt are probably going to have a big fallout over this. I've been close to my aunt over the years, and I don't know what to even say to her. I am so sorry. I suspect one of two things is happening here. He is playing a multi-year revenge game with you, which seems unlikely. He cheated on you and rewrote the story to put the responsibility on you. Everyone is the hero of their own story, so he twisted this one to make him come out as the wronged party. The two flags aren't a huge deal in and of themselves. Just be glad he showed you who he is and you are free of him. You have to be pretty mean-spirited to say what he did to you. He could have had the grace to say he wanted to leave without rubbing it in your face with cruelty. Imagine finding this out 20 years from now, rather than when you have your whole life still ahead of you. Live well and happily, and never think of them again.